Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: United States investigators recover the data recorder from the ship that hit the bridge in Baltimore, where at least 6 people are presumed to have died. Our other headlines: Rafah under attack. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians face heavy bombardment as the Israeli military steps up its siege on southern Gaza. Israel seals off roads to neighbouring Lebanon after Hezbollah fires a barrage of rockets across the border, killing at least 1 person. And President Xi Jinping tells US executives he'll improve China's business environment as he looks to redress the fall in foreign investment. US investigators have recovered the data recorder from the ship that crashed into a bridge in Baltimore, causing it to collapse. At least 6 construction workers are presumed to have died after falling into freezing water. Divers are now searching for their bodies. The disaster has forced the indefinite closure of the Port of Baltimore, one of the busiest on the US East Coast. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent, John Terrett, in New York, watching the story for us. John, what's the latest you have on the recovery operation?
Yes, it's moved on to a recovery operation. Now, overnight, the US Coast Guard called off the search and rescue operation. They got the divers out of the water, and that is because it was very cold, 48 Fahrenheit, less than that. It's a very fast-flowing channel. There's bad weather around, so they called off the divers, and the search and rescue operation began again at 11G this morning, which is 6 a.m. local time. But within pretty short order of that, it was referred to only as a recovery operation. And as you know, 6 bodies are missing. There were 8 construction workers on the bridge at the time of yesterday's accident. They were filling potholes. It seems extraordinary, doesn't it, that you could die in this way. You're on the bridge working an overnight shift for a small company, simply filling in holes in the road when the bridge came down. Now, the local public radio station in Baltimore is called WYPR, and they have been talking to the wife of one of the 6 people who are missing, and she told them that all the men are aged between 30 and 45 of Hispanic extraction. They're from Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, Salvador, according to her. Now, the National Transportation Safety Board, which is the body responsible for investigating all transportation accidents, both big and small in the United States, while the divers were out of the water, their people were able to get on board the vessel for the very first time, and in doing so, they've recovered the data computers, in other words, the black box. Just like you have on an aircraft, when an aircraft goes down, they always look for the black box. Well, it's the same here, and according to the NTSB, they have that now. Meanwhile, in the city of Baltimore, which is absolutely rocked by what has happened, you've got to remember it's a major, major American city and a major port. There have been prayer vigils held overnight, particularly at the many Baptist churches that there are in the city. And of course, Baltimore is left now with major transport disruption. Not only is the port going to be closed for a very long time, but of course it's going to cause major transport disruption because that bridge has gone. And one of the things to remember about that is that you can't transport hazardous materials through the 2 tunnels that also cross the harbour. You have to go over the bridge. Well, now the bridge is gone. So this is going to add tens and tens of miles to the journeys of many companies. In the meantime, just after we came off the air, or after I came off the air with you yesterday, President Biden spoke at the White House, and the headline out of that is that he's committed 100% federal funds to get that steel out of the water and to rebuild the bridge. But he does require congressional approval for that, Jamie, so he's hoping he will get bipartisan support to pay for this in total at the federal level. Jamie?
John, just talk us through next steps in terms of the investigation and the consequences for that community and for international trade.
Yeah. Well, the consequences for Baltimore are pretty obvious. They're going to have traffic disruption for many, many years, quite likely. It's going to be a very long rebuilding process. Now, the vessel herself, the Dali, was flagged in Singapore, and the NTSB says that Singapore officials are coming over to help them with the investigation. Of course, we know that there was an incident in the Belgian port of Antwerp involving the Dali. I believe it was a crash. And now this morning here, it's being reported that there was a propulsion issue with the vessel in Chile. Now, it does look as if the propulsion is the key to this accident, because you saw the lights going off twice on the ship on the video before it actually hit the bridge. Now, the NTSB says that their probe will include looking at the construction of the bridge. It was built in the 1970s. It took 5 years to build back then. So they're going to look at how it is possible. Because you've got to remember, bridges are hit by vessels all over the world all the time, and they don't fall down like this one did. So that's going to be part of the probe. And they're also going to be looking at the job being done by the pilots. Now, the pilots are on board these big vessels to get them in and out of ports like Baltimore. But we were saying before we came on the air today that you could be the best pilot in the world, and if you lose power, which the ship appears to have done, then what can you do? So that's all part of the investigation that is ongoing. Finally, and relatively briefly, the supply chain issue is worrying everybody. And Baltimore, we now know, is the #1 port on the East Coast for light trucks and cars. They also import and export sugar, a lot of coal to India, and lumber. Lumber is very important in America because many homes here are built by wood, and also LNG, liquefied natural gas. Now, ironically, there are bigger ports on the East Coast, like New York and I think Virginia as well, when it comes to containers, which the Dali was. It was a container ship, as you saw. So what's happening now, ships at sea are now rerouting immediately to New York and also to Virginia, and I think also Savannah in Georgia as well. So we're going to have to wait and see what the long-term effect on the supply chain issue is going to be. In the meantime, for local people in that region, the big problem is just getting around by car. Jamie?
John, we'll talk later in the day. For the moment, thank you for that. Our correspondent, John Terrace in New York. Palestinian officials say Israeli forces bombed several residential sites in Rafah overnight, killing dozens of civilians. The attacks have raised new fears that a long-threatened Israeli ground assault will go ahead. More than 1 million displaced Palestinians are sheltering in Rafah, which is the last refuge on the southern edge of the Gaza Strip. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent Akram Al-Satari in Gaza's southern city of Rafah. Akram, what more do we know about these latest attacks?
Well, as a matter of fact, more attacks are taking place. Around 45 minutes from now, another heavy strike took place in the very southern part of Rafah city, not far away from the Egyptian border. People believe that this is building up and that there is going to be some very large-scale ground offensive sometime soon. As you may hear in background, the unmanned drones are hovering all over the Rafah city for around 5-6 days. More irregular and more intensified intelligence effort is being put, and more concurrent attacks are taking place. In the last incident that took place in Rafah, 4 different houses in 4 different areas in Rafah were targeted all together. And the result of that was dozens of the people who were killed. The Palestinian Minister of Health announced or released the name of at least 19 Palestinians who were killed because of those bombardments, and with the indication that is on the ground and on the sky, with the unmanned drones hovering all over the sky, there seems to be more of the same coming in the very soon, because Palestinians have been seeing that happening, and they expect that it's going to be increased, and it's going to include eventually a ground offensive targeting this area for Rafah, in Rafah, where more than a million Palestinians are sheltering, and where any ground operation will be more than just catastrophic for the public health, for the safety of the people, for the protection, and for the protection and also for the access of the people.
And several Palestinians arrested in raids in the West Bank overnight.
Yes, indeed, several Palestinians were arrested overnight in the West Bank, and also 2 Palestinians were killed in an airstrike that targeted Palestinians who were gathering not far away from Jenin Hospital. The Jenin Hospital, the emergency department in Jenin Hospital was affected. It sustained some damages that it rendered it unoperational, and that kind of activity is continuous, not only in Jenin, but all over the West Bank. In different parts of the West Bank, the Israeli bulldozers, the Israeli armored vehicles, the Israeli jeeps enter the areas, they destroy the infrastructures, and they keep targeting the people in those different areas, and it is part of the ongoing and of the rising bombardments and assault activities in all over Gaza Strip and the West Bank as well, where Palestinians link that to the ongoing atrocities in Gaza.
Akram, thank you for that. Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari in Gaza's southern city of Rafah. But at least one person has been killed in northern Israel in the latest barrage of rockets from neighbouring Lebanon. Let's talk to our correspondent Sarah Coates, watching events for us in Tel Aviv. Sarah, what's happening on Israel's northern border?
Hello, Jamie. Just over the last few hours or so, I've been seeing a significant increase in military traffic heading up the coast. North behind me, we're talking planes and helicopters, as the situation on that northern border certainly looks as though it may deteriorate further. The army even going as far as to close roads to these northern border communities, which I must add have mainly been evacuated. Now, this is these cross-border hostilities are really increasing. A little earlier today, Hezbollah claimed some 30 rockets which were fired over from southern Lebanon into these northern communities, mainly the town of Kiryat Shimona. Many of them made it actually through the Iron Dome missile defense system, hitting buildings, one building coming down on a 25-year-old construction worker, killing him. Let's take a little listen to a few other people from Kiryat Shimona.
There's a crater in the middle of the street. There's damage here to an entire building, and I'm one of the tenants. Force, only force, because there's no choice. That's what they want. That's what they're expecting. We've been abandoned. If I'd been here 40 minutes ago in this place, and I don't even hear an aeroplane from Israel's Air Force. We're here in a very difficult situation in terms of the evacuation.
Jamie, this volley in retaliation for Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon overnight, which claimed the lives of some 7 people. Israel says that they were terrorists heading to carry out terror attacks in Israel. But according to sources on the ground, this area that was hit was actually an emergency building, and the people that were killed were volunteers in their 20s.
And what's the latest you're hearing on the IDF about the operation in Gaza?
The military's just given an operational update, Jamie, saying that it is still conducting precise raids on Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, saying troops are continuing to eliminate terrorists and find terrorist infrastructure. It says that the same thing is happening at the Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis. And according to the Palestinian Red Crescent, this hospital is now completely out of service. Also hearing that the military has carried out a drone strike on what it is calling a member of a terror group. He was allegedly on the phone trying to give away positions of Israeli army military personnel. And this all, Jamie, as Egyptian sources are claiming that Israel is planning on launching this offensive into that southern Gazan city of Rafah just after Eid, which is the holiday after Ramadan, which would fall fairly early in April. So this is, of course, extremely concerning, something that the global community is really rallying against, and why the Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant, is right now in the United States with his counterpart, Lloyd Austin, telling him that this operation should not go ahead. Sarah, thank you for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv.
China has urged Pakistan to find the people behind a suicide attack which killed 5 Chinese dam engineers. The Foreign Ministry also called for more protection of Chinese citizens in Pakistan. The engineers were part of a convoy travelling to a dam construction site when they were hit by a vehicle carrying explosives. No group has yet claimed responsibility. At least 5 people have been killed in a bus crash in Germany. It came off the road near the city of Leipzig and overturned. 53 passengers and 2 drivers were on board the bus, which was travelling from Berlin to Zurich. Public satisfaction with the UK's state-funded National Health Service has hit a record low last year. Long waiting times for hospital and doctor appointments were the biggest complaint. Staff shortages, lack of funding, rising demand from an ageing population, and coronavirus backlogs are all blamed. This comes before a general election in the UK later this year, in which the NHS is likely to be a key issue. You're watching CGTN, still ahead. Come back and invest in China. President Xi's message to the world's top business executives, promising more market reforms.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. United States investigators recover the data recorder from the ship that hit the bridge in Baltimore, where at least 6 people are presumed to have drowned. Our other headlines: Rafah under attack. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians face heavy bombardment as the Israeli military steps up its siege of southern Gaza. And Israel seals off roads to neighbouring Lebanon after Hezbollah fired a barrage of rockets across the border, killing at least 1 person. Come back and invest in China again. President Xi Jinping's message to global CEOs as he promised to deepen market reforms to improve the country's business environment. He's been meeting US business leaders and academics in Beijing. The group includes the bosses of Blackstone, Qualcomm, Bloomberg, who's also the former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney. Beijing recently eased restrictions on foreign investment after it fell to a 30-year low. Well, Amy Selico heads the China office at the business strategy firm Albright Stonebridge Group. She's also a former senior director for China Affairs at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative.
Well, I think it's terrific that American CEOs were invited by President Xi to stay behind after the recent meeting of the China Development Forum for him to relay to business executives, academics involved in U.S.-China relations that indeed the Chinese government wants to encourage American companies to remain, to expand in the China market. That is welcome information to American executives. And I think it follows on the very positive meeting that President Xi had last November in San Francisco when he met with many of these same executives. Stabilizing foreign investment, particularly American investment in China, is a good thing for the overall bilateral relationship. So I'm encouraged by what sounds to have been a very positive meeting.
It might be generous to describe the current relationship as spiky. I mean, given the rather tense geopolitical environment, realistically, what are the outcomes from this? How will we know that it's been a success? When will we know that it's been a success?
Well, Jamie, I think we have to put this one meeting in the context of the overall relationship and what else the U.S. and China are doing to try to stabilize, yes, what indeed is a contentious and competitive relationship. So just a few hours prior to President Xi meeting those American executives and academics and those who are promoting U.S.-China exchange, the Deputy Secretary of State, Kurt Campbell, tweeted that he had had a conversation with his counterpart, the Vice Foreign Minister, indeed to discuss continuing to stabilize U.S.-China relations, a relationship the Deputy Secretary of State characterized as one of competition, but one that requires continued coordination in order to maintain stability in the overall relationship. All of these dialogues are critically important so that the U.S.-China relationship, as spiky as it will continue to be, can remain stable and not a source of instability on the global stage.
The warmth that you describe sounds very heartening. Does it survive a forthcoming U.S. election and perhaps a change of governance come the EU elections in June?
Indeed, China is interested in maintaining stable relationships with the United States, with the member states of the European Union, and indeed other countries of import as well. I will say I wouldn't characterize U.S.-China relations as particularly warm right now, but I do think it's a good sign that Americans in government and out of government are meeting with Chinese counterparts. It means that both in Beijing and in Washington, D.C., there's a premium being placed on the importance of dialogue to manage difficult issues as well as find areas of cooperation.
Decoupling from China leads nowhere, and cooperation is the only option. That was President Xi's message to the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte during talks in Beijing. Xi called the Netherlands a gateway of cooperation between Beijing and Brussels and urged Dutch companies to invest in China. Our correspondent Ross Cullen reports.
The Dutch government said the goal of the trip was to focus on economic cooperation opportunities, the importance of a level playing field and equal market access. The role of Dutch firm ASML has also been key in the discussions surrounding Mark Rutte's trip. It's the world's leading supplier for the semiconductor industry, and earlier this year the Dutch government denied ASML the chance to export more of its tools and equipment into China, bowing to pressure from the United States. China is trying to develop its own homegrown chip-making industry. The United States is trying to reduce its reliance on China, and European countries like the Netherlands are trying to protect their interests. The last time that Mark Rutte and Xi Jinping met was on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Indonesia in 2022. At the time, the Chinese president said that countries should not politicize economics and trade, and that industrial supply chains should be maintained. This is Mark Rutte's fifth and likely final trip to China. He is standing down as Prime Minister, a post he's held since 2010, as soon as parties can agree on the formation of a new government following national elections at the end of last year. Ross Cullen, CGTN, The Hague.
Asia has great potential to develop zero-carbon power generation. That's the story from the Bao Forum taking place in China's Hainan province. Our correspondent Gao Ang reports.
Today we have a lot of interesting topics for the forum, such as artificial intelligence and also combating climate crisis, as well as deepening financial cooperation for Asia. And today, during the morning, I also moderated a panel about how innovation, green transition, and also the digitalization and integration could lead high-quality development. So top officials from the Ministry of Transport and also a chairman of Energy China and entrepreneurs from a new energy industry came to share their practices and experiences in different industries and also from their own perspectives.
China's industrial profits have returned to growth and a sign that the market might be stabilizing. They were up 10.2% in the first 2 months of the year. Compared to the same period in 2023, foreign invested companies and private businesses outperformed state-owned enterprises. This comes after industrial profits declined last year by 2.3%. Thailand has voted to legalize same-sex marriage. Just 10 lawmakers opposed this legislation in the lower house of parliament, with 400 in favor. Thailand is the first country in Southeast Asia to recognize gay marriage. The international food industry is gathering in London for the UK's largest exhibition of its kind. Among them, representatives from China who want a slice of the market. Our correspondent Stuart Smith reports.
The UK imports over $70 billion worth of food a year. It comes from countries near and far. Where these stalls stand used to be where British traders returned from voyages round the world, bringing back with them lavish and exotic delights. Now this expo centre offers UK wholesalers the chance to discover what's getting taste buds tingling outside the country and introduce it to the British palate. Eric's wasabi certainly awakens the senses, while Japan may be known for the condiment most commonly associated with sushi. The ingredients come from his home region of Shandong.
The wasabi is originally from Japan, but the material of wasabi is from China. So we have the advantage of the material, and we produce the final product of wasabi, and we supply around the world. I think here the UK market, they require the top quality products, and the market volume is very good. So I feel very confident about the market here.
After Brexit, traders already active in the European Union now need to make an extra effort to forge relationships in the UK, which is why many are here.
More than 1,500 companies from over 100 different countries are joining the Chinese representatives to try to get a bite of the British food and drink market. Globally, this is big business. The trade is worth more than $3 trillion a year.
And it's not just food and drink that's on show here, it's the equipment that makes it too. There are ovens which use artificial intelligence to cook your dinner, a machine that autonomously cuts the meat for a doner kebab, and this company from Guangzhou makes a smart coffee machine designed for the hotel industry.
The coffee culture is developed on our generation, so now it gets more and more popular. We have more and more coffee shops than the milk tea shops now. Yeah, so it's a good sign for Chinese coffee culture.
Keeping people fed in Britain relies on overseas trade. As a small island nation, nearly half of all food sold in the UK is imported from overseas, and there are good profits to be made for anyone who manages to grab a slice of the British market. Stuart Smith, CGTN, London.
The headlines again. United States investigators recover the data recorder from the ship that hit the bridge in Baltimore, where at least 6 people are presumed to have died. Our other headlines: President Xi Jinping tells US executives he'll improve China's business environment as he looks to redress the fall in foreign investment. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.